Hola, ¿qué tal? Bienvenidos a Desde Cero con Manuel. Welcome to Right From the Start. Today's guest is our special guest, film director, musician, and UFO researcher, J. Michael Long. Jay, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
Good. Well, let's get started, and let me ask you, where were you born?
I'm originally from Mississippi, and I grew up in Ellisville, which is in the Free State of Jones, if you saw that movie. Ellisville, Mississippi, and lived in Laurel, and I worked in radio around that area. And then about 7 years ago, wife and I came to Waco for her job, something she needed to do, and I ended up here.
Okay. And talk about your family a little bit. Your wife, and you know, where were you?
Her name's Edith, and she's originally from Mexico City. Then she lived in Querétaro, Mexico, and then she came briefly to Arizona, went back to Mexico, came to Hattiesburg, Mississippi, where she was an instructor at the University of Southern Mississippi, and then from there she started working for a company called Command Spanish, and then another company now that brought her to Waco to start a warehouse.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, before
the rest of my family lives in Mississippi.
Okay, you and your wife are the only ones.
Yeah, we're the only ones over here. Yeah.
Okay. So, Jay, before we get started, I wanted to remind everybody to please subscribe to YouTube and help us keep growing and help us keep bringing cool guests like Jay here. So please subscribe to the channel. So let's get into why you're here, and we're here to talk about UFOs. Mm-hmm. Okay, when did you become interested in UFOs?
In 1973, I was about 12 years old, and this huge orange ball floated over my parents' house, our house.
Is this in Mississippi?
This is in Mississippi. It was in Ellisville. And Ellisville is about 90 miles from the coast. So this object, when I spotted it, it was towards the north, and it was coming towards, to hover over like the house and all. And I had a football and was playing with it, and I was just riveted watching this light in the sky. I didn't know what it was. It drifted very, very slowly. It was very big, very bright, and it got over some of the trees behind our house. It just kept going, and it went all the way to the south towards the coast. Right. Well, later on, I discovered that Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker from Pascagoula, Mississippi, were abducted that night. And so it made me wonder if maybe what I saw was the same thing that they saw. However, they described a blue light, and the one I saw was orange. So maybe they changed the color of it somehow. Mm. But this thing was drifting very slowly. And when it got right in front of me, I knew nothing about UFO abductions or anything like that.
Right, you were 9?
I was 12.
12.
I was 12. And it was right about the point where it got right in front of me. I remember thinking to myself, don't take me, don't take me, don't take me. So why I would think it would take me, I don't know. But it continued to drift on. And I remember thinking it was big enough to put my mom's car in it twice.
Was this the tic-tac shape that they described? Or it was a round ball?
Very bright round ball. It made the tops of the trees glow orange as it was drifting over them. Yeah, it was really huge.
Okay. And was that the only experience?
No.
Tell me about the second experience that you had.
Second experience was in 1975. A friend of mine that lived up the road, I had gone up there to his house, and we were just sitting under the carport talking. And as I turned to say something to him, I noticed this silver ball in the sky. It was probably about dime size at that point. And as it drifted against the wind, because the clouds were moving this way, it drifted against the wind and got directly above us and stopped. And he and I were, looking at it and going, wow, wow. And I remembered, because I'd gotten into UFOs a little then, that in a magazine I read, you're supposed to record what time it is when you see one. So I said, we need to figure out what time it is. We were kids. Neither one of us wore a watch. And he yelled at his sister to bring out a clock.
Right.
And it's kind of funny because she brought this big wall clock off the wall and brought it outside. And we were like, okay, well, that'll tell us what time it is.
Right.
And she walks out to the edge of the carport, looks up and says, nope, I'm going inside. And went inside. But we continued to watch it there. In fact, Kevin had a pellet gun, which were real popular in the 70s, pellet gun, BB guns. And he popped that thing up like 20 times. Pew! And about 2 seconds later, we heard ding. And I'm like, oh my God, you hit it, you shot at him. And anyway, it drifted off. Well, clouds drifted under it. It was beginning to go up after the BB gun thing. It started ascending upwards. Clouds moved under it. We lost sight of it. So I started home. I wanted to make a note of what all I had seen because of this article in this UFO magazine that I had seen. And as I was walking down the road to go back up to my house, I looked over and it was had dropped down out of the clouds and was just kind of sitting there watching me, I guess, as I walked home until I lost sight of it. But that was the second one. Since 1973, I've averaged what I consider a good sighting once every 2 years.
And so, all in Mississippi?
No. Now, once we've come to Waco, every couple of years I see something.
All right, in Waco.
Yeah,
okay.
In Waco.
Yeah,
in my yard.
Me and my son Alex were talking about, Texas UFOs, and has anybody seen one here? And so
yes,
that answers our question.
Yeah, saw another little smaller orange light pass over one night, just sitting there watching it. But I've had several sightings along the way. Some of them I actually don't remember because it became so casual that they were happening. Some I do remember because there was just something really unusual about it. But every 2 years I have one. I don't know why me. I have no idea why I see them and other people apparently don't.
Right. What is the most interesting story that you've heard about UFOs?
Well, I can tell you another one that I saw that I find interesting.
Right.
Okay. I, for a brief time, worked at a Kinko's in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and I had walked outside. And I walked out to have a smoke, and I looked up in the sky, and a line of little silver saucers were coming along. Must have been about 6 of them. And as they moved, they would get my hand lower so your viewers can see. Right. As they moved, one would go up, and then the next ones would come up, and then one would go up, and the next one. And they kept doing this motion, going up and down. Well, this guy walked out of the store, and I said, hey, look, what's that? And he stands there, and he looks at it. And after they all had gone all the way up, I turned to him, and I'm like, wow, did you see that? And his response was, and he walked off. And I'm like, what? Right. Sometimes I wonder if people actually see something different, or if they're seeing, exactly what I'm seeing. Right. It makes me wonder, because why he would not have thought that was amazing. This is before drones. Drones could do that easily.
I was going to ask you.
Yeah, this was back in the early 2000s. Right. It was before drones. It was,
or before people could go out and buy them, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure the military had some, but they were, I don't know. And I don't proclaim that these things are alien. I don't know what they are.
Right. Well, that's why they're unidentified. Right?
Unidentified flying objects. But, what it is and where it comes from, that's my question. That's what I want to know.
Okay. Well, let's get into your film career. Director, producer, writer. I'm the editor. How did you get started on producing films?
When I was working at Kinko's years ago, I had to take a medical leave because I developed neuropathy in my legs. And so I was off work, and, doctors, they don't cure you, they just throw drugs at you. And so they had thrown a whole lot of drugs at me, including one called Cadian, which is a form of morphine. And I woke up on my girlfriend's couch, and I didn't know where it was. I didn't know what time it was. I didn't know what day it was or anything. And I just sat there and I said to myself, I'm not going to be a drug addict. I refuse to be a drug addict. Even prescription stuff, I won't. So I started thinking about, what are you going to do? And I looked over at my camera, my tripod, and I had some editing software. And I thought, I'm going to make a documentary. So I produced a documentary called UFOs 1973, which is about everything that happened in 73 when I was 12. When I saw mine, it a whole lot of things worldwide happened that year. And when things like that happen, it's called a flap. I don't know why they call it that, but that's when a whole lot of UFO activity happens. And I did a documentary on that year and all the things that happened and all the things that was politically going on at the time too. For some reason, you get a flap when there's national news happening, political things. I don't know why there's a correlation between, but so anyway, I did that documentary and I won a film festival award with it. And after I won the film festival award, a executive producer in California contacted me, and he wanted me to do some things for him, which I did. And then one day he called up and he says, "How do we keep this going? You keep producing things, and I'll continue to distribute it." So I didn't really want to do that, but I thought, well, I'll throw out some astronomical number and they won't be able to do it, and we can just amicably say, okay, So I threw out this astronomical number, and he goes, "Oh yeah, sure, we can do that." Okay, well, for that kind of money, I'll do it. So I started producing mostly UFO, alien, ancient alien, conspiracy theory, and Bigfoot stuff.
Right. How many films have you directed?
Oh, man, I can't.
Let's say, is it more than 20?
Oh, I'd say it's more than 50.
More than 50?
Probably somewhere between 50 and 100, if not more. Some of them are essentially narration with stock footage, and I don't really look at them as the big ones. But like, for example, this one, Alien Contact.
Yeah, let's put it on there.
Put it like that, Alien Contact. This one has interviews with people all in it, all over Mississippi, that saw the same thing I saw and what Calvin and Charlie saw.
Who did you interview for this film?
I interviewed Calvin Parker. Charles had already passed away when I shot this. So
but those are the ones that were abducted, right?
Calvin was abducted.
Calvin.
Yeah. The rest of them are people who saw something that same night. They were either across on the other side of the river or somewhere up the river. And then I was 90 miles away, so I'm on it also.
Okay.
But it's called Alien Contact, the Pascagoula UFO Encounter, I believe. And I believe if you dig in YouTube, you can actually watch it on YouTube for nothing. Okay. But if you want the DVD, they're available out there.
Okay, where can they find the DVD?
Just search the title on Google, and there'll be several places. Okay. Alien Contact, the Pascagoula UFO Encounter DVD. Okay. Search that. You'll find plenty of places to get it.
What is the most interesting film that you've directed?
That's a good one. I did one on Bigfoot where I interviewed. Do you remember there used to be a TV show not long ago called Killing Bigfoot? Not Finding Bigfoot, okay. Killing Bigfoot.
Yeah. I know about Finding Bigfoot. I never heard about Killing.
There was one called Killing Bigfoot, and it included members of the GCBRO, the Gulf Coast Bigfoot Research Organization, and I interviewed them and put together a Sasquatch film on them and their group and their sightings and things. The other one would be this one, the Pascagoula one. To me, those are the two that stand out the most.
This is more personal to you, right?
It is. Yeah. I also did one called American Biker, where I went to St. Louis and interviewed motorcyclists and biker groups up there in that area. And then I did another one on UFOs up there, too. I'm trying to think of what the title of it is now. But it was shot in Pennsylvania. Okay. And those where I get to do interviews. That's the ones I like the most. But some of them are footage and narration, and they basically just tell a story. Right. But they don't have people in them, interviews, such as that.
Okay. What is your next film project?
Actually, I don't know, because as of Friday, I shipped off the last one that I did, which is on dark ops and just, like secret government programs and things like that. And I shipped it off Friday, so I haven't yet been told either go do something myself or here's an idea. That's usually what the executive producer does. He'll just say, alien abductions are real popular right now. Do something on that, and I take it and run with it. I do the writing and everything and put it together.
Okay, but you're still very active in directing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yes.
what do you want to do next?
Oh, that's a good question. I always enjoy doing things on UFOs. I kind of have put Bigfoot behind me. I've been there, done that, seen things myself, and I'm not really sure I want to go in that direction. So I think what I would love to do is go around Texas and shoot in the state. I want to shoot the Marfa Lights, the dinosaur footprints down around Austin, the rock wall, supposed to be an ancient wall that was found and discovered in Rockwall, Texas. There are a lot of things like that I would love to be able to just drive around the state, shoot footage, narrate it, do some on-camera stuff, and put together something on Weird Texas or something like that. I think that would be a lot of fun.
Right. I bet it would.
Yeah.
We'd like to tag along.
Well, I'd love to have you. I need a cameraman.
Let's talk a little bit about UFOs and aliens. What do you think these UFOs really are?
Good question. I think that if it isn't ours, it isn't the Chinese, it isn't the North Koreans, it isn't Iraq's or Iran's or Germany or Russia, or if it doesn't belong to anybody here on Earth, somebody's building these things. Right. And so my theory is that it's extraterrestrial. When you can rule out everything else, and well, right now we're having a lot of information coming in about China and balloons and things, but I really kind of see that separately. A lot of what these things do, that even the Chinese could not create that technology. Right. So if you rule out everything else, extraterrestrial is the only thing left over, and that probably is what it is. But I think that there are three types of extraterrestrial or UFOs. One would be your physical spacecraft that are piloted by physical beings who are flying here through some propulsion technology we don't know about and are occasionally visiting the Earth. The other would be a sort of, let's say, a supernatural type thing. In other words, it's kind of happening more spiritually. They may or may not be corporeal. They may or may not be physical. They come here for their own reasons, and occasionally they visit people, but this is more of a psychic phenomenon or a supernatural phenomenon rather than a physical phenomenon. And the third one would be they're either physical or non-physical, but they're using some sort of interdimensional conduit to travel here. It could be wormholes or it could be something like that, but they're using an interdimensional component in order to go from wherever they're coming from to here, which also may not be physical. So of the three, and I think that we have a phenomenon in all three, I'm more interested in the first. I want a physical craft that you can walk up and thump it, that you could take it apart or back engineer it, find out how it flies, physical beings that really are there, and maybe you could communicate with them or something of that nature. So I'm interested in that aspect.
Right. So that was going to be my next question: is what type of technology do you think they really have?
Honestly, I think that if they are physical beings coming here, they may not be using much more advanced than what we're capable of. Apparently, they went in directions that their technology developed that way, whereas we, for example, if we had followed Tesla rather than Edison, a lot of our technology would be very, very different because he had a lot of different ideas and went in a different direction. But we followed Edison, and we're now stuck with, electrical wires and things working on that principle. It's possible that they're only a little bit more advanced than us, maybe 100 years, or they could be thousands of years more advanced than us. We would have to get one, to know. And I don't know. Now, as far as if you go into the spiritual or the interdimensional aspects of it, doesn't really matter because you can't study that. Right. You can't do anything with it other than report it. You're not going to put one on a slab. You're not going to back engineer their craft because they're not physical. Right. So there's really nothing you can do about that except just believe it or not believe it. I tend to be more, I want to look at the technology. I want to look at the beings themselves. Can they even breathe in our atmosphere? That kind of thing. Questions like that. Right. I'm more of a nuts and bolts guy.
Right. So do we currently use any of their technology Have we been able to copy any of their technology?
Well, as ufologists, we think so. We think the government is at least 15 years advanced in what you see publicly. There are sometimes, stories come out that scientists have invented ion engines or something like that. We've never practically used one, other than I think NASA did use a couple of satellites or probes, space probes that had an ion engine on it. We've never used it commonly, though. And we think the government may have technology that is getting close to what they have.
Right, because in a short period of time, I mean, the technology has advanced.
Ours, yeah.
Right, like super fast.
Exactly.
Compared to our,
in our entire human existence on Earth, 75 years ago, suddenly, and then, by the 50s, it started advancing. So 4 decades later, here we are with computers and the ability to do a podcast to transmit all around the world.
Our cell phones is a computer.
Yeah, it is.
People thought that they were going to get bigger, but everything got smaller.
They got smaller. So, and the more smaller you make it, the more you can pack things into an object and do all sorts of things with it.
Right.
So, it's very possible that our technology is getting close to theirs, which may be why the government's kind of started to release a few things now and then that's happened, like what they call the Tic Tac UFO, and now these Chinese balloons stories and all are turning out to be that they shot down an object over Alaska last week, and they won't say what it was. They're not calling it a balloon. They're saying that it was just something odd and strange. They shot it down. So maybe they're realizing that sooner or later they're not going to be able to hide it. So we need to start putting some stuff out there, and that may be what happened. What is happening.
So you've heard of Bob Lazar, right? What do you think about his story and him working on
I'm one of the ones that believes that Bob Lazar was right on the money. I think he did see what he saw. I think that he tried his best to describe it in the best way that he could, and he may have gotten some certain scientific principles slightly off, but I believe that he did see what he saw, and that was at Area 51 or a site called S4.
Right, S4, yeah.
S4.
And any stories that you know of technology and UFOs?
Technology and UFOs. It always appears in most of the stories that they're
like when you saw it, did you see something extraordinary, that movement or what?
The one that I saw at Kinko's, that the line came across and went up, that was an extraordinary maneuverability, because helicopters could do that, but you'd hear them. They would make a lot of sound. An airplane certainly couldn't just vertically rise like that, at least nothing we knew of at that time. And of course now drones can do it. But at that time I thought, well, that's very, very advanced to be able to literally just a whole line stop in the air and then one start going up. It was a very L-shaped vertical motion. And so that was very advanced. The first one I saw, the orange ball that floated over the house, it was so intensely bright. I knew it wasn't a candle in a balloon or something like that. I mean, this was so the brightness of it itself, no sound, slowly moving across the sky. The fact that it made no sound, it had none of the ones I've seen had wings, tail wings, any avionics of any kind that you could discern, and they were all silent. So that in itself says this is an advanced technology that at the time in 1973 we couldn't do that. We can now with drones and things.
Was the nuclear bomb explosion testing in 1945 the reason for the spike, you think, of UFO sightings?
We think so, and the reason why is that we believe that if there are extraterrestrials out there, an electromagnetic pulse would have been sent off into space from a nuclear explosion. It would have been very easy for anyone with any advanced technology to know that we did just nuke something. So I think that brought a lot of attention to us. And of course it was 47, there was a crash in Roswell, which may have been because we shot it down, or it may have been because they crashed. We don't know enough to know that. But I think that they started checking us out at that point when we dropped the nukes, because at that point suddenly we could now be a threat to them. If we started taking our version of intelligence and technology into space, it could be disastrous for them. So I think that they started keeping an eye on us about that point. They've been here before. There were sightings going back thousands of years.
Right.
But it intensified, like you said, in 45.
What is the most intriguing story that is out there that's your favorite? Because these go back to, like you said, 1440 BC. You know, that was recorded of sightings. Talk to me about the. Is Roswell one of your favorites, or which one is?
No, Roswell honestly has been done to death.
Right.
I mean, everything that we're ever going to know, I think, has already been.
And what I'm asking is these popular, mainstream stories: Roswell, Lubbock, the Betty and Barney Hill.
That one's intriguing, also to me.
The Ariel School in Zimbabwe.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
There was a whole class on when they landed.
So, do you know about the Betty and Barney Hill abduction?
I know what most everyone else knows about it, yeah. I mean, I believe that it happened. I believe it happened exactly as they told it, even though some of it they told under hypnosis. But it just brought it out to the surface where they could talk about it. The one that I'm really intrigued with is the Travis Walton case.
Right. And that's going to be my next topic.
That's going to be your next
because you interviewed one of his friends, Steve Pierce.
Yes, I did.
Tell me about... Now, the Travis Walton, the way we found out about it was Fire in the Sky.
Right.
It's a very popular movie, or at least it's one of my favorites.
Right.
And that's how I think it came out in the 90s.
Yeah, I believe so. And the only thing inaccurate in that movie is the parts that take place on board the ship. Nothing like that happened. That was just made for a movie. But everything else that happened is pretty accurate.
All right, tell me about your interview with Steve Pierce.
Steve is a great guy. He's a truck driver. He was one of the lumberjacks that were there in Arizona. And he was there in the truck when they, when Travis jumped out and ran towards the thing, and they drove off. Right. And then they came back to find him, and they couldn't find him. He was gone for 5 days, and no one knew where he was. They even sent dogs out, helicopters, everything, so he wasn't hiding somewhere as best they could tell. And then he just showed up 5 days later, had a 5-day growth of beard, and he had been somewhere. No one knows where, and then they determined that, he had been on board that UFO. But Steve was one of the guys that was there and watched it when it happened. It scared the bejesus out of him, And then all week long after that, they were being accused of murder. And they were suspects, because they couldn't find Travis. And without a body, they could not, jail them, but they kept bringing them back in and interviewing them and all, and they kept telling them, we have no idea where he's at. But eventually when he showed back up, the case was sort of dropped because he wasn't dead, he was alive. And the sheriff continued to investigate it, and he eventually came to the conclusion that he said he wasn't going to say necessarily that, they're aliens or whatever, he said, but he believed Travis's story.
Right. So what do you think really happened?
I think that's what really happened.
That's the story?
I think that they took him. The way he described it inside the craft, seems logical to an extent. I don't think that there was any foul play involved in any of it. And I've talked to Travis himself, and I've talked to another one that was there, and he is befuddled about it as anyone else. He's like, I tell the story over and over again. He said, but he's like, this or that could be. He didn't know if they're aliens, if it was some kind of government thing going on, So when you meet a witness and you talk to them, and if they're, I can tell you exactly what happened. This happened, blah, blah, blah. I know this, and I know this, and I know that. I tend to kind of throw up a red flag, Whereas if you talk to a witness and even they have questions about what happened, that's a real experience, because they're not trying to fill in the holes with what they believe. They're saying there are holes there, and I don't know, myself. And so I think that is a good sign that they're telling the truth.
Okay. Because I mean, there've been so many events and so many incidents. I mean, how you think all these people are wrong? You know, say the incident in Zimbabwe. I mean, these were school kids, and it was a whole school, and there was about 60 of them. You can't get them all
to lie about the same thing. Exactly.
And as of today, they still tell the same story.
Exactly. And you know, we have the Betty and Barney Hill case. We have the Charlie and Calvin case in Pascagoula. We have the Travis Walton case. We have the Alamagash 4. We have various others, you know, that have been abducted by aliens. And those are only the ones we know about because somebody wrote a book about it, you know, or somebody came and did a documentary or a TV show on it. There are a lot of other people out there that have never come forward and told anything.
Because there's thousands.
Yes.
Right? There's thousands of incidents.
I've had people write me. I've had people meet me at a conference or something, and I want to tell you about something that happened to me, but I don't want anybody to know. And I'm like, okay. And I get this story that's fantastic, you know, but I'm like, I understand. You don't want anyone to know, so I'm not going to tell anybody. They're not looking for publicity. They don't want it. They shy away from it. Right. But they want to tell somebody. And so people like us who write the books, make the documentaries, and do the TV shows and all, a lot of times they'll come up to us and, I want to tell you something. I've never told anybody this. And you get these, you know there's a lot more out there than what you see in books, movies, and TV shows.
Yeah, because when I sent this message of hey, I'm looking for a UFO researcher to come on my show and talk about UFOs, I mean, you can't imagine how many people, you know, message me and say, hey, you know, we saw this and I saw this and we saw some UFOs here and we want to talk about it. And you know, I just read probably 50 stories in a week.
Right.
You know, and it's amazing how many people actually seen.
Someone will watch one of my documentaries. I get an email, you know, hey, Mr. Long, I want to tell you this, you know, and I really liked your show or something like that. And then, oh, yeah, by the way, this happened to me, you know, and I believe it happened to you.
And again, these are unidentified flying objects.
Sometimes I get, you know, I get an email from someone who says that there was a creature looking through my window, and then I blacked out, and then when I woke up he was gone, and I'm like, yeah, I might kind of know what happened in between, you know, but I don't want to suggest it or say anything.
Okay, what else can you tell me about UFOs and UFO research?
It's painstaking. It takes time. You got to dig through a lot of files and a lot of information. You have to go. Google becomes your friend because you got to search everything and not the stuff that comes up first. Get down on page 11, you know, and start looking for things. Sometimes it's phone calls. Sometimes it's going to meet somebody. Sometimes it's coming here and doing a podcast so people know you're there. You know, it's painstaking to do it. And then at the same time, I'm also busy doing programs on things like this. And have to write about it. So it's really interesting. It's fascinating. Unless you're seriously into it, I wouldn't say get involved in ufology unless that's going to become a passion of yours.
Do you do the conventions, the lectures?
Sometimes. Not as many as I used to, but I do them.
Where do they take place?
Oh gosh, there's one coming up in San Antonio at the end of this year. There'll be one.
What is that called?
It's called the Wide World. Oh, you caught me there. I can't remember the name of it.
But it's in San Antonio?
It's in San Antonio. It'll be like November. August or September, there's one in, it's right outside of Troy, Texas. I went there. And I cannot off the top of my head.
Troy is next to Waco, right?
No, it's up north. It's like northeast. It's real near Caddo Lake.
Okay.
I cannot remember the name of the town, but yeah, there's a small one there. Craig Woolheater puts that one on, and I went to it the last time, and I sold DVDs there, and he asked me to speak at the next one. So this year I'll be up there again, and I'll speak at it. And I'm speaking at the one in San Antonio. There's one in March that's going to be just outside of El Paso, and I believe there's 2 or 3 more coming up, you know, this year, just in Texas.
All right. Who do you like to listen to?
Who dialect?
To speak about this.
There's way too many of them.
Who's your favorite?
There is a guy. Okay.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but who's your favorite?
Okay, and he's not known. There's a guy in San Antonio, Texas. His name is William Poulin, and he has a little video podcast. It's just him speaking, and he's very, very scientific based. I mean, anything that he's going to get involved in has to be very, very scientifically based. There's no going off into the woos, you know, and he wants to keep it very real. And I enjoy watching his podcast that he does. It's on his blog, which is on Facebook, and he usually does one once a week or so. And it's mostly him talking, but he lays things out very scientifically, very clear. I think he believes that they are aliens. You know, he's not saying that they're not. He's just saying, I want answers. I want factual answers to these questions, and I don't want to speculate. Right. So I like that about him. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Nick Pope is another good one.
Who's that?
Nick Pope. I did a documentary with him. Okay. I like to listen to him speak because he's speaking from a government point of view. He was the British MOD, Ministry of Defense UFO guy when he was over there and in that department. So there's things he'll tell you up front. I can't tell you because it's classified. Right. But if it's not classified, he'll go all into it.
Where's he from?
He lives in Arizona.
Oh, in Arizona. Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's move on to the next topic, which is Bigfoot.
Okay, Bigfoot.
Okay. That's a very, very exciting thing to talk about because it's a creature, right? Mm-hmm. How much work have you done, or how much research have you done about Bigfoot?
Actually, quite a lot. Let me go back in time now. 1998 is when I've actually always been interested in Bigfoot, even when I was a kid, because when I was about 13, 14, that movie The Legend Boggy Creek came out and scared me. I was a kid. It scared me. And I thought Arkansas is not that far away, but so that had started my interest in it, but it wasn't until 98 when I got involved with the GCBRO
and what is that?
The Gulf Coast Bigfoot Research Organization, and they're the southern version of like the northern one, the one out in California. And I went to a couple of barbecues that they had, which was, open for people who were members or whatever to come to it. And one night I was on the back of a pickup truck, and we were going out into the woods next to a cornfield. And they were taking us, it wasn't even a road, it was just enough room to get a truck through, and we were going through there. And we had, we're rounding a corner. And as we were rounding the corner, sitting on the back of that truck, I was talking to a guy that was sitting next to me. And as I looked over his shoulder, something ran across the road. It was very unusual. Didn't have a tail. It was on all fours. It was running, low. Had a round head, no snout. And its movement, the way it ran, was very unusual because it would put its hands down and pull.
Right. It wasn't like a bear.
And it was nothing like that. It had a very flat back as it scooted across this little cut through in the woods. And its motion, though, was fascinating to me because it put its palms down and it pulled while it put its feet down and pushed. And this push-pull motion, we as humans and even animals can only bend your hand back so far.
Right.
This thing could bend its hand all the way back, its paw or foot, all the way back and touch the top of it, could touch the top of the shin. So when it ran, it kept the feet flat on the ground and bent its knees to the point where the entire body was probably an inch and a half off the ground. And it shot across this thing, this little cut through there. Well, I'm there looking for Bigfoot. Bigfoot walks like this, right. Turns and does the Bigfoot thing. Right. And I'm thinking, could this thing even get down that low on the ground and run? And thinking that they might think I was just making something up, I didn't tell anybody for a long time that I had seen that. And one day, one of the guys that we were at another thing in Mississippi, another event, and he described something he saw that was coming towards him. And he described it the same way. He said it had its hands down on the ground. It pushed and pulled and was moving towards him that way. And then realized he was there. It turned and cut and ran away real quick. But the way he described it, I thought, aha, that's validation.
Right.
You know, that's my verification right there, that I'm not the only one that saw something like that. So after that, I started talking about it. There was another time in Mississippi, we have something called a Beaumont Boger, which is down around Wiggins, Mississippi. Beaumont is the area. And a bunch of us would go down there, the pastors in churches, firemen, police officers, all, because people, there was a road you could go and sit on that road, you could hear them out in the woods screaming, calling, doing the different calls and things. And a bunch of us would meet out there. Well, one day I had got there a little early and I parked on the side of the road and I was waiting for some of these other people to show up. And when I got out of the car, I looked into the woods and there was this shape like that. And to me, I thought, pareidolia. It's just a collection of leaves and limbs and all that kind of looks like a head and shoulders. And I didn't think anything about it. Had my digital camera in my hand. And I just dismissed it as that's just an odd shape in the woods. And I turned and I looked the other way and I looked behind me and I looked to see if anyone was coming. And when I turned back, it was gone. The shape was gone. And I tried to shift to see if maybe I could make it come back because I thought it was a collection of light and shadow. Turned around, went around the other side of the car and started walking straight through the woods, into the woods where that, whatever it was at. And I got into this like clearing, opening, nothing there. Noticed that the ground was depressed. It was straw so that you didn't get footprints or anything, but it was pressed in like something heavy had been there. And I looked around, turned around, I looked back at my car to see what I would have looked like from its point of view, and it was clear to see me, there. So I walked back out, and I don't call it a Bigfoot sighting. I called it I don't know what that was, right. But there was something standing there with a large head and large shoulders that wasn't there a few seconds later. And I kicked myself because I had that digital camera. If I had just took a picture of it and then went back when it was gone and took another picture of it, I could have done a comparison. Right. I could have done a video comparison of both, but I didn't take any pictures.
Right. Probably the most famous footage is the Patterson film. Mm-hmm. What do you think about that film? Oh. It's been analyzed so much, and
I know.
Some people say it's fake. Some people say it's real.
Oh.
What's your opinion on it?
Patterson-Gimlin film. On Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I think it's real. On Tuesday and Thursday, I think it's fake. And on Sunday, I rest. Another researcher made that comment.
I mean, we all want it to be real, right?
Yeah, everyone wants it to be real. And I think a lot of people argue from that point of view that they've convinced themselves it is real. I don't necessarily know that it's real. I don't necessarily know that it's fake, but I keep that on the table. I keep it open that might be fake. It may be some costume. That if you start looking in the story of the guys that shot it and everything around those people, one was a rodeo cowboy that was obviously known for being kind of a jokester and things of that nature. And Bob Gimlin is still alive, and Bob Gimlin claims that what he saw is what he saw. You know,
and that's what the film is. The Patterson-Gimlin
right.
Bigfoot
He would have been he was the guy on the horse with a rifle. So if it was fake, it was very stupid of this guy to walk right through there with him on a horse with a rifle ready to shoot this thing. And the other one ran, with a camera towards it. But I don't know, The film itself, there's a lot of things that people are claiming that they see in the film, which as a documentary filmmaker, and I work with digital video and I film and things like that, I can tell you there's no little top knot on the top of the head. There's no gunshot wound in the leg. There are a lot of things there that are either just a momentary thing that showed up on the film frame. I'm not going to go into all the technicalities of it. I'm just going to say that I can usually spot things like that, and I know others can too. And so some of what is being said about that film, don't take it as rock solid evidence. It isn't. There's a lot of different things that can cause you to see something in that film that's not there.
Is that the only footage that we have of Bigfoot?
No, there's several others.
There's several. What's another famous?
You're putting me on the spot to try to name locations and things. There's one called the Memorial Day film, which is something that runs across and goes behind a hill and comes back up and grabs something like a little baby and runs off with it, and like a baby Bigfoot, in other words. And I don't know that one's ever been resolved. There was one that a researcher shot that you only get a few seconds of it, and he shot it on VHS, but it walks through the woods. Don, who is a member of the GCBRO, he did something really, really incredible. Not super incredible, very simple, but it worked. And it was one of the days that they were on location shooting one of the Killing Bigfoot episodes. He had a GoPro camera on the front of his hat, and he turned his hat sideways, pointing the camera that way rather than the way he was walking. And he started walking through the woods. Well, it caught something, moved from one tree to another. It was almost like it just leaped, took a leap and jumped over from one tree to the other. Upright, bipedal, didn't look like a person per se, because it looked a little taller, thinner, skinnier, something like that. And he caught that on a GoPro. I've known Don for years. He's a great guy. He's honest as they come. And if he says that he shot that and it's a Bigfoot, I pretty much believe it's a Bigfoot, based on his character and based on him and the way that he shot it. He wasn't trying to shoot something. He just happened to get it. Right. So I think that's real.
Right. Before the podcast, I asked you if you ever heard of Lloyd Pye.
Yes.
And he has a lecture on YouTube. It's not on YouTube. They put it on YouTube. Mm-hmm. And it's called Everything You Know Is Wrong. Yeah. And he ties aliens to Bigfoot and how they, and he says that we're genetically engineered. Mm-hmm. And that's how, we became humans. What do you think about that? Do you think that we're genetically engineered?
Possibly. It is possible. My Bigfoot theory is that I think Bigfoot is its own thing. It's not an offshoot of humans. It's not an offshoot of apes. Right. It is, as humans evolved and apes evolved, this thing evolved on its own up. Right. And it is similar in ways to primates.
Because, and I recommend everybody watch this lecture on
Lloyd Pye.
Lloyd Pye, Everything You Know Is Wrong. Mm-hmm. Because he talks about the Anunnaki and about aliens and they got creatures from Earth and genetically engineered them into humans using creatures from Earth.
Well, that would explain where we came from, because humans are not indigenous to Earth. Right. Scientists already figured that out.
And he said that Anunnaki made an inferior copy of themselves in order for them to use as slaves. And this lecture is so interesting. I mean, he talks about Bigfoot. He talks about the planet Naboo. Yeah. And it's just a great lecture, and it's just it could be entertaining just to watch. But I recommend everybody, and I'll put that link on this podcast so everybody can watch it. And
Lloyd was a great guy, and he thought things through. Right. He really did. He has passed away now. So. The little skull that he had is fascinating, about the distance of the eyes and the shape of it and everything. It appears to be extraterrestrial.
Right. And it's just one of the things that just amazed me when I first watched it, and now I watch it, over and over, because it's just interesting. And
I love amazing stuff like that. I love the whole ancient aliens thing, maybe there were.
What do you think about that show, Ancient Aliens?
I like it.
It's scary.
Some of it gets way off, to me, but at least it's plausible. It is. So a lot of the things are plausible. Some of the ancient monuments on Earth are apparently made in Saskatchewan. There are these huge boulders that look like they were melted into shape. Right. And where they lay on top of each other, they fit where you don't need any mortar, you don't have anything, you couldn't get a slip of paper between them, and yet they're perfectly molded to fit together, and they're gigantic. You know, either they were hauled from miles away down a mountain, up the other side, and put into place, and then trimmed to be this exact, which would require an enormous technology, even today, to do it. Or it was done by aliens, and it may have been, you know.
Right, because I don't think anybody has a good, how the pyramids were built.
Yeah, the pyramids themselves appear to function like a machine.
Right.
They're like a sound type healing device or something. Right. Their shape, their exact proportion, the direction they are, you know, to the heavens.
Not
all
only
of
that,
these
but the stone was brought from so far away.
Right. Mm-hmm.
You know, how could they carry, you know, millions of...
And there are some scientists saying that they think that they may have been a polymer type, where they took elements that were around there, mixed them together, and created a concrete-like polymer that built those stones.
That would make sense.
Yeah, and then they shaped them, and then they put them, you know, into the pyramid. But we don't know. There are places around the pyramids, in the pyramids, that appear to have been laser cut.
Yes.
You know, holes in block or things like that.
That just probably we couldn't do today.
Yeah, it would be very, very difficult. I mean, it could be done. We have the technology now. Back then, no.
Right. So what do you think about these TV shows, finding Bigfoot and killing Bigfoot and ancient aliens and all that? I mean, nobody ever found Bigfoot on Finding Bigfoot.
Well, I used to say that they couldn't find Bigfoot if he was handcuffed to him. These are television shows. They're designed to be entertainment. Often they're scripted. Often you do what the director says or the producer wants. And so when you're doing a television show like that, you are not actually on an expedition as you would as a ufologist or a cryptozoologist or something like that. You don't really have time. You're shooting a TV show, and you're being directed, and they're shooting, you know, around you, and they pretty much tell you what to come up to the camera and say, or say it this way. So those shows are great entertainment. They're fun to watch. They're nice to, to speculate on, and even my shows. I'll tell you that right now. They're great to speculate on, but they're not always accurate as far as if you're really wanting to do ufology or cryptozoology. The television shows are the last place to go. Right. Find an author who's knowledgeable in what he's doing and read his book. You'll learn a lot more that way. And the TV shows are fun, you know, and I'll tell you that I produce them. If my producer or my executive producer says I want something that leans in this direction on this particular UFO case, well, I write the script to lean in that direction, even though I may not personally believe it. I have done programs as I'm editing them, just sitting there looking at what they're saying, and then just kind of sitting back and going, well, that's bull crap. You know, but put it in there and let it go, because we have to. That's our job. Right, that's what we do. We make our money that way. We're entertainment. What I do for, if I go out to research something, there's no entertainment involved in it. I'm going out there to look for information and the reality of what someone saw, or where something landed, or whatever. I'm doing it, approaching it from a scientific point of view. Right. When I do the TV shows, I do what the executive producer wants me to do.
Right. So do you have a go-to guy? Do you have that one person that you go to and ask questions about UFOs and Bigfoot?
No, not really.
Is it multiple sources?
I'm kind of the go-to guy to some people. Okay. If I do have something specific about a specific case, and I know a researcher has done a lot of work on it, I'll go and I'll confirm something or validate something or verify something, through Kevin Randall's great with that. But if I don't, or I don't know where to go and ask, I usually try to go find the answer myself. That way I know there's no ambiguity to it. There's no someone just kind of guessing and thinking that maybe that's what it was. I can go find the actual information. That's what I try to do.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, this topic is very entertaining and exciting and kind of scary sometimes.
It can be.
Right?
The very first sighting I had in 73 terrified me. After that, it was fascinating, and it even reached a point where it kind of became blasé. It was like, oh, well, there's another one, and I would just go on. I didn't pay that much attention to it anymore. But I usually like to be behind the camera because of a documentary film producer. I don't like to be in front of it that much. But I decided last year, I said, well, I want to start doing podcasts and start going to these conferences and speaking and all, because I've been doing this so long. I might as well teach the next generation or something, or at least tell them what I've seen and what I've done. So it kind of moved me in a direction of getting more out there in front of the camera rather than just being the guy behind a movie like that with with your name in the titles, and that's it. Right.
What is the name of your podcast?
Used to be, it was called Conundrums. I stopped doing it several years ago because it became a job itself. It was so difficult to put it together because back then we didn't have devices that switched in all fours. It had to be edited and put together and all. And after a while, I just said, well, okay, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to have to focus more attention back on my documentaries, and so I quit doing it. I'd like to bring it back, but what I'm thinking now, if I do another show, and I kind of want to, is I want to do musicians, writers, actors, and maybe even other podcasters. But I'd like to interview those people, instead of just doing UFOs. I would I would do all kinds of subjects, multiple different subjects.
So what is your favorite movie from aliens or UFOs, fiction or non-fiction?
Fire in the Sky would be one of the ones up there. Close Encounters of the Third Kind's always a favorite. That's a classic. There was one that came out in the early 80s. Many people probably don't remember it, but it was called Wavelength. And this girl could sense, the aliens or whatever. And they went into this mountain, this underground facility where the government was keeping 3 aliens on ice. But she could sense them. She could sense that they were in pain or whatever. And that's what led them down in there. And the movie was called Wavelength. It was very good effects for the time. Wavelength, yeah. Wavelength.
Okay.
And to me, that's one of my favorite UFO movies, and nobody remembers it.
Right. Yeah, I think Fire in the Sky is probably my favorite. But,
Fire in the Sky is really good.
Yeah, other than that, I think the other ones are kind of monster movies.
Right. There are a lot of good documentaries out there too. Right. Some of them are independent like me, and some of them are on television.
Yeah, and we'll do a couple of links to your documentaries and films.
Yeah, like I said, just search it, go on Google, it'll come up. Somebody selling it.
Okay. So aside from you being a UFO researcher and Bigfoot researcher, you're also a musician.
Well, I called myself that. Yeah.
Let's talk a little about that. What instrument do you play?
I play the Native American style flute, and got into that about 7-8 years ago. It's actually an easy instrument to play, but once you learn to play it, then there's always more you can do and more you can do and more you can learn, and so you can get very deep into it. I'm also, a couple of years ago, just before COVID, I bought a guitar, and I decided, well, I'm going to try to learn to play guitar. 2-3 years later, I'm still a beginner learning to play guitar.
Right.
But I love that, and I play a hand-pan drum.
Okay. But do you have recordings of your flute? Do you do Native American music? Is that what it is?
It will sound a lot like that. I'm not Native American, so I don't claim it to be Native American.
And you wrote that down on your website that you're not. But
I'm not pretending to be Native, nothing. But I mean, there's things scattered out there on Facebook and different social media where I've played. This Christmas, I posted one from several years ago where I did Silent Night with it.
Okay.
But I don't really. I have an album. I have a CD.
Right, and that's what I was asking.
It's called Harmony. It's available on Spotify and I think Amazon. You can buy it on Amazon.
What's the title?
It's called Harmony.
J. Michael Long?
Michael. Yeah, J. Michael
J.
Long.
Michael
Just,
Long?
yeah, J. period Michael.
Okay.
There's another artist out there that's J-A-Y Michael, and if you search, you might come up with him.
Okay.
He's not me. You know,
So
I
that's
look
why
like this.
That's why you just use the J.
Yeah, I use the J. period
Okay.
Michael, so that I'm distinguished.
Well, Jay, what else do you want to add to the podcast about UFOs and whatever you think you want to talk about?
Well, I want to promote that one's coming up in San Antonio. I'll be there speaking if you want to meet me or get an autograph or something like that.
Right.
I'll have DVDs for sale. And then before
what date? What's the date?
You see, you put me on the spot.
Okay.
I don't have it right here handy.
Get it to me, and then I'll post it later.
Sure. And then there's one that Craig Woolheater's doing in up around Caddo Lake. I can't think of the name of that town, but it'll be in a library there. And it's a UFO conference. There'll be several speakers. I'll be speaking as well. So he'll have links to these things, and you can go and check out those links, get your tickets, and come see us.
And that's in San Antonio.
One's in San Antonio. One is up around Caddo Lake.
Okay. Anything else anybody you want to say hi to or send a hello or something?
Well, I'll say hi to William Pullen. He's in San Antonio. My wife Edith, I'll say hi to her. And anyone else out there watching, hi from me.
Yeah. Well, that was a very this was a very interesting podcast, and I want to thank you for taking time to drive all the way from Waco, Texas, right here in Waco, and I appreciate you coming down here on a Sunday on Super Bowl day.
That's right. Yeah, maybe I'll get home in time to catch the end of it.
You know, we really appreciate you, and our audience is going to appreciate this podcast because it was very entertaining, very interesting. So
I'm happy to appreciate
to be here.
I'm glad that you asked me.
And I want to thank everybody for continuing to subscribe to Desde Cero con Manuel, and please continue to subscribe and support our podcast so we can have a guest like Michael or J. Michael Long on our podcast. And I guess we see y'all next time, and thank y'all for joining us at Desde Cero. All right.
All right.
See y'all.
Bye-bye.